One of the first things I like to start with is the rack position. Where do we put the bar? And there are two things that I like to focus on when I'm determining how I want to rack it. And that is the bar going to push me around? I don't want that bar pushing me around at various positions within the squat. And then also, is the bar going to move around? Because if the bar moves around, then it will end up pushing you around as well. So where I like to put it is I like to put it behind my traps on top of my rear delts. So on top of my shoulders, under my traps, and from here, it's not going to move around on me, and it's not going to push me around. Now, when I was first starting out, I used to like having it higher up on my traps. It's higher up, as you can see there's a space between my traps and my shoulders now. But what I found is, as I got heavier in the squat, and my quads weren't strong enough to handle the load all the time, I would start searching for some posterior chain. And you end up leaning forward a little bit, coming out of the hole. So come down, come out of the hole, boom. If you end up leaning forward just a little bit, that bar's into your neck, might roll forward on you, and now you're doing a good morning getting it up. I didn't like that. Tried going lower, playing around with it, and I found that when I went too low, if I went really low, and some guys squat like this and it works, but for me, what I found was, with my stance in the squat, what I found was from here, just to hold on to a heavy weight, I really had to lean forward, just at the start position. So my hips are already very far back. This would cause me to have trouble getting my hips down below my knee, so depth would become an issue. So as you can see, I'm having a hard time getting down and getting depth. Okay? So if I wanted to widen my stance, I could do this, but I like my stance where it is. So I liked it behind my trap, on top of my rear delts. On top of the delts allows me to still stand up somewhat straight. So the other thing I like to think about is, what am I doing with my upper body? So from here up, from the hips up, I like to think of the upper body as being set in stone. It's one piece, doesn't move. So this is my hip, this is my shoulder, okay? I'm here, I start to squat, and there's very little movement. The hip travels back slightly, but it's pretty much like an elevator, going up and down. One piece, upper body. The angles in relation to the ground don't change too much. Things I want to avoid are hard tilting, or leaning back too far, okay? So I want to lock up my upper body, make it really tight, so these things don't happen as easily. So there's three things I like to think of when locking everything up. There's head tall, so it's like you're a puppet on a string, and someone's pulling the string at the top of your head, right here, boom, everything's tall. This activates all of your spinal erectors, gets everything straight, okay? Boom, everything straight. Some people say chest up or shoulders back, but that doesn't quite do the same thing to the spine. That just activates the wrong ways. So we want everything up, okay? So now my spine is straight. Next, we want to tighten up the back. We have these big muscles, come all the way under the shoulders, all the way down, called our lats. We definitely want to tighten those up. So reach for the floor, okay? We reach for the floor with our elbows. I'm driving my elbows down, pushing my head up, boom. Next, I want to lock everything in really secure. So I externally rotate everything back. Head tall, boom, externally rotate, okay? From here, this also adds more of a shelf with my rear delts. But from here, everything is locked up. Now it's important, I just said externally rotate, and some people, if they do that without activating their lats, they're going to end up being these people who squat all bunched up like this. This isn't going to help you if you get into that bottom position and the bar moves forward on you. You're going to roll out. It's going to be tough. Okay? So you want everything down, down, head tall, and tight. Okay? I'm setting up. I'm pulling my head away from the bar. I'm tall. Okay? I'm driving my elbows down, and I'm pinching my shoulders back. There. Now I have a nice bar position. So when I squat, this sucker is not going to move anywhere on me. Next thing, wearing a belt. I like to wear belts with anything above 85%. Below 85%, I try not to use a belt unless I'm doing 80% for max reps or a high amount of reps. When you're using a belt, a couple things to think about are, you hear cues like big belly or big air. Those are great cues, but sometimes people still don't utilize the belt properly, or how I think is proper. And how that is the goal is to create a large amount of pressure. So when we're creating pressure, it's not enough to just stick the belly forward, okay? We want to be creating pressure everywhere, all the way around. So you can put a belt on. I like to wear the belt approximately around my belly button. Bigger guys will tend to want to wear it higher. So I put it around my belly button. I put it fairly tight, but not so tight. One of the things you can check, is squat without a bar. So I have my belt on, it's nice and tight. Squat without a bar. And right here, I can still maintain my positions, right? If I'm wearing a belt and it's so tight that when I come down, this happens, it pulls me in, you might want to loosen that up, okay? Now, back to pressure. So we want to create pressure all the way around the belt. You don't want to just feel the pressure in the front here, like pushing your belly forward. You want to feel the pressure all the way around. So one of the things you can do to make sure you're doing this, stick your fingers in different areas. So I've got my thumbs in, crush my thumbs. Boom. Put it here, crush my thumbs. Good. Put it back here, crush my thumbs. So this is how you want to make sure that you're getting the most out of your belt. You take a big breath in, break your belt. So let's look at the hips down now. What's going on downstairs? So I like to have my heels, my stance, I like to have my heels underneath my hips. I like to have a slight flare, say 11 o'clock, 1 o'clock. Not too much of a flare, not perfectly straight ahead, just a very slight flare. One of the things I'm focusing a lot before I initiate my squat is my weight distribution. Some people like to focus on like twisting out, screwing their feet into the ground. I don't focus too much on that. I'm more concerned with where is my weight. So I don't like to be too far forward into my squat because then I have a hard time getting depth and you might come up onto your heels. So I like to make sure that I'm more like a 60-40 heel to toe. Okay? And one of the things that goes along with that is when I'm standing up here holding my squat, I release my glutes, and the glute drifts back about 1 inch to 1.5 inches. I don't push it back, I just let it go to where it wants to go. And then from here when I squat, it's in a nice position. If I push it too far back, then my squat is going to be a little bit too forward. If I don't, and I leave my hips directly underneath me, then it's going to be harder to get down there for me. I might shift forward on my toes for a split second. When I'm squatting, as I'm going down, I'm thinking about pulling my thighs right into my rib cage, okay, or my knees into my shoulders, knees into my chest, the thighs into my rib cage. Boom, I'm trying to hit here, okay. Reason being, for a while I played around with knees out, but what I found was I was running away from my VMOs too much. Pushing your knees out is a good cue at one part of the movement, but as a universal cue for the entire squat, I don't like it. It creates a lot of tension on the outside. Okay, so pushing my knees out creates a lot of tension over here. When you're squatting, helps with this part of the movement. At the bottom, we want to use our vastus medialis. So we want to use our VMOs. Okay, so we pull our knees up, and it's okay if this happens. That is okay. We want that to happen. That generates some speed, and once we come out of the hole, we can push out, and that's going to get our glutes involved. If you're not sure what I'm saying, go into a quarter squat, push your knees together, and then try and stand up violently. And then push your knees out, okay? Stand up violently. You'll notice that pushing them out has a lot more glute activation. Another way to look at it is when we're thinking about how much muscle is involved in the movement, when you're pulling your knees up, or your thighs into your rib cage, the amount of muscle under tension is going to be a lot of this quad and a lot of the hamstring back here. When we're pushing our knees out, we have a lot of tension back here and we're running away from this area. So we're not using our quads as much. And with this stance, this is more of a stance for quad dominant squatting. If I was squatting more like this, then screwing my feet into the floor would make more sense. Okay, so just quick recap. Feet under hips slightly with very slight flare. Butt drifts back a little bit, just a little bit, okay? And our weight is 60-40 heel to toe. As we squat, we're pulling our thighs into our rib cage, boom. And we come out of the hole, push as hard as you can, and then if you're having trouble getting out of that hole, getting those hips through, then that's when we push our knees out.